Ladies and gentlemen, federal workers and injured federal workers, Riverdale Wellness proudly presents to you the Injured Federal Workers Podcast.
Good afternoon, everybody, and how are we today? It's Dr. Mark Eisen coming to you from the Injured Federal Workers Podcast Show and the Riverdale Wellness Studios in Bronx, New York City. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so what's our next topic? Our next topic is a multi-fold topic. It has to do with the CA-17. It has to do with a functional capacity test. It has to do with a job offer. Here we go. What is the purpose of a CA-17? Let's pull it up so we know exactly what a CA-17 is. Okay? I'm going to share my screen with you, and you have an idea of what I'm talking about. Here we go. Okay? The CA-17 is a duty status report. And I'm not going to discuss how it's supposed to be filled out. But what I will focus on is this part right in here. The part right in here, which is the sitting, standing, walking, climbing, kneeling, bending, stooping, twisting, pulling, pushing, so forth. It tells you how many pounds, whether it's continuous or non-continuous, over a blank number of hours of day. What does it mean? That the medical doctor is responsible for filling that out so the job knows what you can and cannot do. Okay? How does the doctor know that you can do the work over an 8-hour day? They theorize that information. They're guessing that information. But the way they really can know it is by doing what's called a functional capacity test. Okay? Functional capacity test is an evaluation that determines the ability of the evaluated person to function in a variety of circumstances. Okay? Most often for employment. Here's another functional capacity test. If it's visual, cognitive, or physical abilities. So what's a CA-17? It measures your physical abilities. So on a functional capacity test, what would happen is that the doctor is putting you through a variety of tests of bending, twisting, lifting, balancing, and so forth to see whether or not you can complete the task over a period of time. That's a functional capacity test. So what does that mean exactly? You go through the battery of tests, they fill in the results, and now they put it on a 17 and they send that to your job. What is supposed to happen next is, it doesn't mean that you can go to work, although, let's just go back for a second, although on the form itself, it says, when did you notify employee was advised to resume work with these limitations? Yes. And what date were they advised? Or was it limited or partial? The problem is that the job has to find you and give you a job offer. They have to find you a position that you can do that work. It's not just going back to work. They have to give you a job offer. Why? So both you, your managers, your supervisors, in whatever form that you do, that you can complete the work that you're supposed to do. So they give you a job offer. They found a position for you in a certain location or at the same job where you can do the same things that you can do, or a job that you can do with those restrictions. Does that make sense? Again, you go through a battery test of pushing, pulling, and lifting. So if that's not your job, okay, great. But your job might be driving. Can you do the driving? Can you sit for an extended period of time? So they'll put you through a battery of tests to see that you can do that work. They notify your job. The Department of Labor will work with your job to get you back to work with those limitations. And then they'll send you a job offer. So part of that job offer will consist of what the medical doctor put on a functional capacity test. Okay, I think I'm clear. You're clear. You understood it. Great. Now what? what happens if the doctor said that you can return to work with no limitations? That means you're fine. But now what happens if you return to work with limitations and it's been determined from those limitations that you really can't do that job? Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to share with you a screen. Let's go through it. Patient went to see a certain doctor. Obviously, I blocked out the name, the notes, the office, and everything else. The doctor wrote, the patient is doing great and completely non-tender over the fracture. X-rays above that the fracture is indeed healed. Therefore, we weaned her off of the boot to a sneaker. She can go back to work next week and return to the office to see me as needed. What that means is the doctor cleared her. She has no residuals. Let's read the next note. I tried to send the patient full-time to the job. However, she comes back complaining of a great deal of pain in her foot. She still has midfoot swelling and some decreased motion and is quite weak. I therefore recommended that she return only to the job 4 hours a day and instead set her up for physical therapy to help her get strong, and I will see her back here in 4 weeks to see how she was doing. What's the problem? What's the problem here? The problem is, does she fill out a recurrence? Should she have gone back to work? Should she have done a functional capacity test to perhaps see that she could do the work? So let's start with the concept of the functional capacity test. Here's a perfect point of getting her to go through a battery of tests, not just a physical exam, but can she walk for a period of time on it? Will that create swelling, right? Set her through a trial of tests, not just because she was non-tender on that one day, and then there's swelling then occurs, okay? Or problems start to occur again. Give the person a battery of tests before you send them back to work. And so therefore you could fill out a 17 and she can return to work properly to a job that she's given. Now the person has a problem. Because you've changed the hours, you've now said on the first note, she's better. The second note means it's a new case. Whether it's traumatic injury or an occupational disease claim, I'm not going to get into that at this moment, but the point is she has to file new paperwork. And why does she have to file new paperwork? Because the doctor cleared her. He wrote in his note to her the following. She can go back to work next week and return to the office to see me as needed, which means that she's fine. She could return to her full job with no restrictions. So she's fine. There is no recurrence. There is no opportunity for her to fill that paperwork out. Okay? She has a problem. And this is the situation where you want to go through a functional capacity test. So now that if you weren't ready to go back, she will have to file a whole new claim. And that's the purpose of this episode. Okay? So what can we learn before we go to commercial break? Make sure you do a functional capacity test to properly fill out a CA-17 and wait on the job offer that they're going to give you, and not just go back to work, but go back with the papers in hand that are approved by your HR department that says that you can return to work with those limitations and not any sooner. Whether it's a recurrence, whether it's an occupational disease claim, whether it's a traumatic injury, those are other topics to discuss. Today's topic is really just on the CA-17, functional capacity test, and returning to work with a job offer that was accepted and approved by your medical doctor. Again, make sure your medical doctor sees the job offer and it correlates to the CA-17 that they filled out. I'll say that last part again. Make sure the job offer matches the CA-17 that the doctor filled out. Why? Because either party could have made a mistake in what they filled out, and this way your doctor approves it to make sure there's nothing wrong with it. Remember, you have 7 days from the time you were given the paperwork to review it and making sure, and that is your time to go back to your doctor with that paperwork. Okay, so let's go to commercial break, And let's see what's next when we come back.
Are you suffering because you got hurt on the job? Are you struggling to find a doctor who knows how to navigate DOL and OWCP paperwork? Are you aware that when your case gets accepted and your doctor sends you back to work with limitations, and you still need medical care, the Department of Labor will reimburse you for your time that you went for therapy instead of working? If you work for at least 4 hours and then go to a doctor that is an hour away and spend 2 hours doing therapy, that is an equivalent of the 8-hour workday. All you need to do is fill out a CA7A and a receipt from all your doctors for all your visits that you were there for those appointments. You will then be reimbursed for your time out of work. Please call 718-601-1540 to see if we can help you with the medical paperwork and recover from those injuries, as we have 2 decades worth of experience. And check out our Google reviews.
Paul's Weekly Joke. Go.
No? No. So this guy's on a train station. Somehow ends up in front of the train, right? And the train operator is able to stop. He doesn't get terribly injured, but he ends up under the train. The whole top of his scalp is ripped off his head. All right, but they get him to the hospital, and they perform surgery. Anyway, they save his life. All right, so they're asking him in the hospital, how did it happen? What happened to you? And the guy says, off the top of my head, I can't remember anything.
Are you suffering because you got hurt on the job? Are you struggling to find a doctor who knows how to navigate DOL and OWCP paperwork? Are you aware that when your case gets accepted, you will get reimbursed for all your travel fees? The form that gets filled out is a 957. All you need is a receipt from all your doctors for all your visits that you were there for an appointment. Please call 718-601-1540 to see if we can help you with the medical paperwork and recover from those injuries, as we have 2 decades worth of experience, and check out our Google reviews.
We will end today's episode with do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can, by John Wesley. Everyone have a wonderful weekend. Best health and love. Show it to everyone. Have a great weekend.